In an old house on the outskirts of the city lived a little girl named Sofia. She had a special hobby. She loved to draw imaginary friends. One of her drawings stood out. It was a boy in a long coat with dark eyes and a strange, smiling face. Sofia always said that this boy was her best friend who lived with her in the house. But her parents started to worry when they noticed Sofia spending more and more time talking to her invisible friend and even hearing strange whispers from her room at night. One night, when darkness enveloped the house, Sofia's parents decided to find out who this boy was that their daughter talked about so much. They decided to peek into Sofia's room when she was supposed to be asleep. What they saw made their hearts skip a beat in horror. On the wall of Sofia's room was a huge drawing of the boy in the coat, and his face was smiling but seemed twisted with fear. At that moment, they felt that something ominous and incomprehensible was happening in their house. The parents tried to understand who this boy in the drawing was. They turned to old archives and learned that many years ago, a boy fitting the same description had lived in that house and had disappeared without a trace. His disappearance left a heavy mark on the history of the place. Fear began to grip everyone who lived in the house. Sofia continued to communicate with the boy in her drawings, but now there was something dark and threatening in her words. She said that the boy was asking her to help him return from the world of the dead, and that he carried an evil that needed to be unleashed. The parents realized that they could not stay in this house. They moved away, trying to leave behind the strange events and the ominous presence of the boy in Sofia's drawings. But in their hearts remained fear and uncertainty about what was really hidden behind these mystical events and drawings. After moving from the old house, Sofia's parents hoped they wouldn't encounter the ominous events of the past again. They tried to forget about the boy in the drawings and convinced themselves that it was just childish fantasies. However, the terrifying events refused to stay in the past. The new house seemed like the perfect place to start a new life. But with each passing day, the situation became stranger. At first, it was just minor details, sounds like whispers at night, illusions of shadows disappearing in the corners of their eyes, and strange smells in the air. One night, when Sofia's parents returned home late, they heard a child's laughter coming from Sofia's room. Fear returned to their hearts when they opened the door and saw Sofia sitting at an old table, talking to an invisible companion. "Mom, Dad, this is my friend." "He's back," exclaimed Sofia joyfully, but her eyes radiated something terrifying and unrecognizable. The parents tried to calm her down and asked who this was. Sofia smiled and said it was her friend, the boy from the drawing, who had returned from the world of the dead thanks to her help. She claimed that he carried dark forces with him and that they needed to help him be freed. The parents were frightened for their daughter and decided to investigate this strange situation. They turned to experts in paranormal phenomena to learn how to help Sofia and rid themselves of the ominous influence surrounding them. After extensive research, the experts concluded that there was indeed a spirit of a boy in the house, restless and using Sofia for dark purposes. They decided to perform a special ritual to banish this spirit and protect the girl. On the night of the ritual, something terrible happened. The ominous ghost of the boy, manifested from Sofia's drawings, began attacking the house, causing chaos and panic. The parents and experts faced a force that defied explanation and control. But ultimately, thanks to the efforts of everyone present and the love of Sofia's parents, the spirit was banished from the house. Sofia was freed from its influence, and the place that seemed cursed became peaceful and safe again. However, even after this event, the parents could never forget the fear and horror they experienced. They always remembered that even in the world of dreams and fantasies, there is a dark side that can penetrate reality and cause harm. In a quiet town on the outskirts, lived a family with two children, the older sister Emilia and her younger brother Jack. From a young age, Jack showed an interest in strange things and mysteries, which didn't always please his parents. One hot summer evening, as the sun was setting, Jack brought home a small black box he found on the street. Inside was an old mirrored cube, and Jack couldn't resist the temptation to play with it. He started repeating mysterious words he heard from a secret voice inside the cube. From that day on, everything began to change. Jack became withdrawn, spending days alone, talking to someone invisible. Emilia noticed that his shadow reflected in the mirror seemed to gain its own consciousness. The shadow started talking to Jack, and sometimes they would act out little scenes in front of the mirror, as if playing with someone. Seeing this, Emilia felt a strange sense of unease. She told her parents about her brother's strange behavior, but they dismissed it as just his childhood imagination and didn't pay much attention. A few days after Emilia first saw Jack playing with his shadow, she woke up on her bed with the partially destroyed mirrored cube next to her. She felt a strange sensation, as if something incredible had happened. but she couldn't remember exactly what. In the following days, strange events occurred: whispers in the night, mirrors in the house began to gather dust and distort reflections, and even stranger things happened with Jack's shadow. Jack became even more peculiar, spending more time in front of mirrors and talking to an invisible companion. Emilia realized that something terrible had happened between her brother and the shadow he saw in the mirror, and she feared that it was only the beginning of something much more horrifying. One evening, while their parents were busy at work and the house was empty, Emilia heard strange sounds from Jack's room. She decided to check what was happening. When Emilia peeked into the room, she saw Jack standing in front of the mirror, looking at his reflected shadow with a mad expression. "You'll never leave," Emilia heard the shadow whisper. She screamed her brother's name in fear, but the shadow disappeared instantly, and Jack stood in front of the mirror as if nothing had happened. He didn't remember what had happened, and Emilia experienced agonizing doubts: was it real or just her imagination? Since then, Jack became even stranger, spending more time in front of mirrors and talking to an invisible companion. Emilia understood that something terrible had happened between her brother and the shadow he saw in the mirror, and she feared that it was only the beginning of something much more horrifying. Life in Sofia's house seemed ordinary and peaceful. Her parents, Eliza and David, were caring and loving. They lived in a cozy house on the outskirts of a small town, where every day was filled with laughter and joy. But one day, everything changed. Sofia had always been a dreamy girl with a lively imagination. She loved playing hide and seek and traveling in her fantasies. However, in recent weeks, something had been bothering her. She constantly felt like someone or something was watching her. This feeling of fear and unease became especially pronounced after Sofia started noticing strange sounds coming from her closet. Sometimes at night she heard faint tapping and rustling, as if someone was prowling there. She tried to convince herself that it was just the creaking of wood or the wind outside, but she was afraid to look into the closet. One day, when her parents were at work and the house was empty, Sofia decided to finally confront this. Her heart was pounding as she approached the closet and opened its door. Inside, it was dark and quiet, but the feeling of fear didn't leave her. She took a few steps forward and suddenly felt something soft and cold under her foot. She screamed and jumped back, looking around frantically, but there was nothing in the closet except her clothes and toys. Sofia sighed with relief, thinking it was just her imagination. But as she closed the door and turned to leave, she saw a huge black shadow growing out of the closet. Her heart froze with horror as the shadow started approaching her. She tried to scream, but her voice got stuck in her throat. The shadow began to take the shape of a strange creature with sharp claws and bright red eyes. Sofia felt the shadow getting closer to her, and in a last moment of panic, she grabbed the nearest thing, a teddy bear, and threw it towards the shadow. There was a crunching sound, and the shadow disappeared instantly, as if it had been torn into pieces. Sofia was trembling, tears streaming down her face. She ran out of the room and barricaded herself in her bedroom, too scared to come out until her parents returned. When Eliza and David came home, they found Sofia in hysterics. The girl told them about the terrifying shadow in the closet, how she saw it, and how she destroyed it with the teddy bear. But when the parents looked into the closet, they saw only emptiness. They comforted Sofia, telling her it was just a nightmare or her imagination. But Sofia knew what she saw was a real threat, and that the shadow in the closet was something bigger and scarier. Days passed, and it seemed like everything was returning to normal. Sofia tried to forget about what happened and convince herself it was just a nightmare. But at night, when she went to sleep, the shadow would appear again in her dreams. She saw the shadow turning into a monster, creeping towards her with claws and bright red eyes. Every time she woke up, her heart was pounding so fast she felt it would burst out of her chest. One day, coming home from school, Sofia heard strange sounds coming from her room. She approached cautiously and noticed that the closet was open, although she was sure she had closed it before leaving. Fear gripped her again, but she decided to check what was inside. When she opened the closet, it was dark inside, but she felt like someone was there. She cautiously reached out her hand and suddenly felt sharp claws on her skin. She screamed and jumped back, but there was only her clothes and toys in the room. Her parents came running at the sound of her scream and asked what happened. Sofia told them about the sounds from the closet, but when they looked inside, they found nothing again. "Sweetheart, maybe you're just tired after school. It's just your imagination," her mother comforted her. Sofia realized her parents didn't believe her. She felt lonely and helpless against what lurked in her closet. She even started doubting her own story, but she knew the shadow was real, and she couldn't forget its threat. Sofia began avoiding her room, especially the closet. She spent more time with her parents or friends, trying to forget about the terrifying creature that was haunting her. But one day, returning home from school, she overheard her mother discussing something with the neighbor, looking towards her room. Sofia approached closer and heard their conversation. "I think Sofia has issues with her imagination. She keeps talking about some shadow in the closet, but I'm sure it's just scary dreams," her mother said. "Maybe she should see a psychologist or psychiatrist. It could be stress or something like that," the neighbor replied. Sofia felt a bitter sense of betrayal. Her own parents didn't believe her. She realized she needed to do something herself to prove that the shadow in her closet was real. But one day, after coming home from school, Sofia felt sharp, large scratches on her back. She got scared and showed her parents, but they dismissed it as just a random injury. However, the next morning, her parents noticed blood on Sofia's bed. They rushed to the closet to check and found it open. Sofia's suspicions were confirmed, but the shadow of the monster had vanished, leaving no trace. Her parents concluded it might be just damage to the closet or a pet's game. Sofia felt her fears becoming reality, but no one believed her. She tried to explain what she saw and felt, but everyone brushed off the idea. Unable to let it go, she continued to ask her parents for help and explanations. Days went by, and tension in the family grew. Her parents spent more time in Sofia's room, checking the closet and surrounding areas for any unusual signs, but they found nothing. Sofia felt lonely and frightened. She didn't understand what was happening and gradually began to doubt her own perception of reality. But the scratches on her back reminded her of the fear and horror. One evening, when her parents were searching for the shadow again, Sofia heard rustling and whispers from the closet. She screamed in fear, and her parents rushed in. But when they opened the closet, there was only her clothes and toys. Her parents didn't know how to help her anymore. They consulted doctors, tried to install cameras, but nothing helped. The shadow remained invisible, and Sofia realized that her struggle with the monster in the closet might be insurmountable. Thus, Sofia's story remained unresolved. The closet was closed, the monster's traces erased, and only the shadow of fear remained in the girl's heart.